True Crime Brewery contains disturbing content related to real-life crimes. Medical information is opinion based on facts of a crime and should not be interpreted as medical advice or treatment. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to True Crime Brewery. I'm Jill.
And I'm Dick.
Divorce and child custody battles can be brutal, but they rarely end in murder. In February 2002, Alan Bates and his wife Terra were excited to pick up his two daughters from the home of his ex-wife, Jessica McCord. His relationship with Jessica had been acrimonious since the divorce, but he loved his girls and he wouldn't give up on them. The couple was planning to take the girls to his parents' home for a weekend visit, a rare and happy event. When Alan and Terra failed to show up at his parents' house, his family was worried. Alan's father called the police, who handled the call as a routine case of overdue motorists. It happened all the time. People made plans and something along the way held them up. But still, this wasn't like Alan and Terra. The longer family members waited for them, the more panic began to set in. Join us at the quiet end for Overdue Motorists, Alan and Terra Bates. Alan's ex-wife Jessica and her police officer husband Jeff McCord would claim that Alan and Terra never showed up to pick up the children. But investigators were concerned their story just didn't add up. Soon the McCords became prime suspects in the disappearances of Alan and Terra. They refused to let the police search their home after they had pulled up carpet, re-wallpapered the walls, and hauled away furniture. So they were hiding something. What investigators found would expose an evil plot carried out by two cold-hearted morons.
That's a pretty good description, morons.
Oh, there's no other way, really. They were just terribly evil and stupid.
Exactly. A real good combination.
Never goes well.
So the beer we're drinking today is called Hitchhiker. It's brewed by Good People Brewing Company in Birmingham. And Hitchhiker is an American IPA with an alcohol by volume of 7.4%. Nice looking beer, gold, white head, a little bit of lace. Good example of an IPA. Aroma of citrus, pine, and sweet malt, which translates into a taste of grapefruit, orange, pine, and caramel. Nicely hot beer. You definitely know you're drinking an IPA.
All right, let's open it up. All right, it smells really good, so bring it on over. I really have a lot to say about this story, so I think we should just dig right in.
Okay, so right from the beginning of their relationship as high school students, Alan and Jessica were just this really unlikely couple. Alan grew up with two brothers. He was the middle child. His middle-class neighborhood was inside the Birmingham, Alabama metro area. And he was a top student in high school. And this is the kind of guy that parents wanted for their daughters to be dating. Polite, honor student, and active member of his church. Not only that, he's a musician. He played the drums in Christian and gospel bands. So he developed an interest in theater while he was in high school. And when his senior class organized performances for the drama club, Alan chose technical theater, lights, sound, and set design over acting. So he didn't have any delusions about him being an actor, although he did like to watch other people act.
Yeah, the theater was just his love.
It was.
So it was between Alan's junior and senior year in the summer of 1988 when he met Jessica Callis. She was a local girl with a very outgoing personality, but these two were very different people. Still, they seemed to get along really well, and Jessica went after him with gusto, attracting him with attention, flattery, and likely sex for the first time. Jessica had a very difficult upbringing. She was the oldest of 3 children in her home. Her dad, an abusive alcoholic, raised them with fear and violence. Nearly every week, her father George and her mother Diane had a knockdown, drag-out fight, and this usually ended with Diane crying and George strutting off to the bar. As children, Jessica and her siblings attended a Presbyterian church. Her grandmother had actually been a member of that same church for 60-some years.
And Alan was this popular guy at school, and he could have dated pretty much any girl in his class. But Jessica was the one who attracted him. She wasn't a beauty, but she did have a pretty smile, long auburn hair, and a lust for life. I like that. Is that your euphemism for she likes sex?
No.
Okay.
Not at all, but that is part of it, sure.
Now, Jessica transferred into Alan's high school when she was like a sophomore, I think, and she stood out right from the start, almost as if she demanded the attention of her peers. She first noticed Alan because he played in a band. Some of Alan's friends quickly developed a dislike for Jessica. She was pretty controlling, telling Alan he couldn't speak with any other girls, not even his friends. She was aggressive, but she could be a lot of fun, too. And unlike a lot of the other girls, Jessica was willing to have sex with boys, which certainly would appeal to Alan and probably any teenage guy.
Yeah, for the most part. After getting involved with Jessica, his life soon changed, though, and not in the way that he had expected. It was just about 6 weeks after they met, and Jessica was pregnant. Many of his friends really weren't shocked, and they believed that she was trapping Alan into marriage. By now, they knew that Jessica almost always got whatever she wanted, and since junior high, she was just kind of boy crazy. She loved the attention, and she didn't hesitate to use her sexuality. But by the time she was in 10th grade, Jessica's life was really out of control. It was as if she had no parental supervision at all, really. She lived with her mom, Diane, and her stepfather, Albert Bailey. But she seemed to come and go whenever she wanted. Once she had her driver's license, she'd just take off in her car, and she might be gone for days, and nobody was checking on her. But Jessica claimed she didn't want to be home because there were always arguments between her mother and stepfather. So I guess he was better than her biological father, but only marginally. He had some similar issues.
Yeah, now it's been suggested that Jessica saw Alan as her ticket to a happier life. She probably had used sex to get close to him, and now she seemed to be using a pregnancy to keep him. And when she first met Alan, she was already sleeping with another guy. But once she got Alan's attention, she went all out to solidify that relationship and downplay the relationship with other males.
Sure, so one example of her behavior was when Alan went on vacation with his family to the Gulf Coast, and this was just weeks after meeting Jessica. And she drove over 250 miles and showed up at the beach where his family was staying. She'd brought a girlfriend with her, and they drove up and down the coastline by the hotels until they recognized the Bates family's van. After they found the van, she and her friend slept on that beach overnight, and the next morning Alan saw them from his balcony. He was surprised, but he was also really flattered that she'd done this. She'd driven 4 hours each way just to see him. And they weren't even girlfriend and boyfriend at that point. They just kind of hooked up and slept together a handful of times. But Alan was kind of flattered and impressed by this, so he invited Jessica and her friend to lunch. And when that was done, the girls drove themselves back home. Jessica was only 16, and Alan's family was very shocked that her parents allowed her to travel all that way on her own. But like I said, Jessica just seemed to have complete freedom to do whatever she wanted. So when school began that fall, Jessica and Alan continued to spend time together. Their relationship fizzled out some, and Alan was actually preparing to break up with her when Jessica announced that she was pregnant. Alan's family began to feel him pulling away from them, and they noticed he was preoccupied about something. His parents felt like something was upsetting him, and they tried to talk to him about it. They'd always been really close. So we don't know what Alan's opinion on getting an abortion was at the time, but he did come from a religious family, and Jessica anyway insisted that she'd be having this child. Alan would have to grow up fast and take on the responsibilities of a father. Now, he was a senior in high school and really looking forward to going off to college, so this was a big blow. And he had a hard time bringing himself to tell his parents about this. So he wrote his parents a letter and left it on his father's desk for his father to read. And in the letter, he apologized for his mistake and said he planned to take full responsibility. As a father, he would provide for his child and his child's mother. so he took it very seriously.
He certainly did. And overall, he was still smart enough to know that he had to continue to work toward his dreams. He wanted to work on Broadway as a stage person and eventually a technical director. Alan tried to see the pregnancy as nothing more than a bump in the road. He decided he would be a responsible husband and father, but he would also go to college and get his degree and do his career that he wanted to do.
Well, that's super smart and mature, I think. According to childhood friends of Jessica, this wasn't her first pregnancy, though. By this time, she had had 5 abortions. It was almost as if she was using abortions as her only means of contraception. In fact, the local abortion providers refused to do any more procedures on her. But Alan didn't know any of this, of course.
Yeah, and Alan's parents weren't completely sold on Jessica as a partner for Alan, or as the mother of their grandchild. Still, they resolved to support their son and do their best with their new daughter-in-law. So Jessica and Alan got married. Alan's grandfather agreed to pay for the birth of the baby at a private hospital. And though she was still in high school, Jessica seemed excited by the idea of motherhood.
Well, and I can almost understand it. It seems like her childhood was pretty shitty.
And it sounds like, for sure.
Yeah, so maybe she thought she could do things differently and this was going to be a better life.
Yeah, maybe, at least briefly.
Well, yes, during that time period. But you know, Alan and Jessica really didn't even know each other that well. The relationship they'd had was just based on infatuation and lust. But the plan was that Jessica would quit school and move in with Alan's family, the Bates. The family knew next to nothing about her, but they understood she was really still just a child herself, so they accepted Alan's decision because until then, he had always shown good judgment. So after Jessica moved in and became part of Alan's family, his parents would show her photo albums from Alan's childhood. Now she came across as really immature, but pretty smart, and as she opened up and told them stories about her childhood, the Bates family became very sympathetic and tried not to judge her. After all, it wasn't her fault that she'd grown up in an abusive home, and Alan, he continued in high school. The stories of Jessica's upbringing did make him feel closer to her, and he wanted to give her a better life. He could give her the stability she'd never had. So she envisioned a house, children, and family vacations. It just seemed wonderful. And Jessica and Alan married that January, and both families tried to make the best of everything.
So the first daughter was born in March 1990, and they named her Samantha. Everyone seemed joyful and filled with love for this new infant. Alan's family came to the hospital to see her, and so did Jessica's mother and stepfather. So things were looking kind of hopeful at the beginning.
Well, I think people were trying, right?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, obviously these kids need help because they're kids. So they've got someone taking care of the birth, the hospital stay, financially.
Mm-hmm.
A pretty close family on his side. So, yeah, they're going to help take care of things.
Well, the Bates were a very traditional family. So even though the pregnancy had come before the wedding, they were happy to have Jessica and the baby living with them. Of course, Alan had felt pressured to marry his pregnant girlfriend, but now he had fully embraced his role as a husband and a father. When their daughter Samantha was 1 month old, Alan and Jessica decided to move in with her mother and stepfather. And that's because the location was more convenient for Alan going to school, and Diane, Jessica's mom, could help her with the baby. But this only actually lasted a few weeks. There was this big fight between Jessica and Diane. I'm not sure what it was about. So this new little family returned back to the Bates' house to live. But once she got back, Jessica seemed different. She'd become very controlling, and she insisted that her mother not be allowed to visit at all. She seemed to be using her power as Samantha's mother to push away her own mother. And this soon became an uncomfortable situation for the Bateses. Jessica's behavior was embarrassing and could be quite volatile. So as Alan worked to finish up high school, there were already problems in this marriage.
Didn't take long, did it?
No, not at all.
So Alan graduated in June of 1990. He then enrolled in classes for that fall at the University of Montevallo. Now it's like 35 miles away. The college had a well-regarded program in theater and fine arts, where he would focus on the technical side of stage work. Now, Jessica had planned to get her GED, but at that point she wasn't showing any interest in it. But she was excited to be leaving her in-laws' home for her own place.
Well, and that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
I think any of us would be. Alan's father, Philip Bates, bought a fixer-upper for the couple, and for his granddaughter, of course. It was small and needed some work, but it was just outside of Montevallo, so the location was perfect. Alan was really determined to complete college, but he also did odd jobs to earn some money. He still played in a gospel band, but Jessica didn't like that. She was very jealous and insecure when he would go out to play with the band.
Well, that's almost something you could predict.
Oh, sure.
Right? So Jessica began to focus on Alan meeting women at his gigs. She accused him of cheating at college, at concerts, wherever. However, there was never any proof. One day she showed up on the college campus with the baby, yelling and screaming at Alan in the middle of a production. And she was accusing him of doing graphic sexual things with the women there, embarrassing him and making herself look like some kind of a nut.
Well, and I would say she probably was some kind of a nut.
Yeah.
In 1992, Jessica gave birth to a second daughter, McKenna, and she continued to be a stay-at-home mom, while Alan now worked full-time and took a full course load of classes. And at this point, Jessica likely suffered some depression. She showed less interest in motherhood and started spending a lot of time in bed. Alan hoped that this was just a mild case of postpartum depression, which would pass. And he did still love her at this point and had faith in her that she could accomplish things. But he really looked forward to an easier life once he finished school and thought maybe things would be easier for the both of them. It's not easy to work and go to school full-time with 2 little babies. It's a lot of stress.
It certainly is.
But things continued to worsen. Alan began spending some nights sleeping on a cot, which was at the university in the theater department. He and Jessica were really falling apart, and he just didn't know how to fix it. She wasn't getting any happier. She wasn't getting any easier to live with. And he wondered if maybe she needed to see a psychiatrist and get some therapy. At this point, they were arguing constantly, and the way he started dealing with that was by avoidance. He was just diving into his studies and avoiding home. He wasn't giving up on the marriage, but his hopes for better days were really kind of fading at this point. Jessica was spending more money than they could afford, and she wasn't contributing financially or even emotionally, and she'd kind of given up even on tasks that she'd do as a homemaker or a mom.
And around this same time, when Alan and Jessica are having all these difficulties, her biological father, George, was living with his second wife, Olivia, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, he'd had no relationship with Jessica or her siblings. But on November 11th, 1992, George called the police. He sounded calm and composed as he told the dispatcher there was a problem at his house, and he requested an ambulance as soon as possible. And when he was asked what was going on, George said he had been beating his wife and she stopped breathing. And actually, Olivia, his wife, was on the bathroom floor, dead as a doornail.
Yes, so he had beaten her to death. Her face was so badly beaten that first responders couldn't recognize her facial features at all. She was just covered in blood. So, of course, George was arrested, and he would be found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. So this was the man who had been with Jessica and her siblings for years. So I really can't help but wonder what the connection is between Jessica's murderous father and what she would end up doing to her ex-husband, who was the father of her 2 daughters. Was there a genetic component here, or was there just something from her upbringing that she may have picked up on?
Well, I would think, if you look at it, she had a horrible upbringing.
She really did, and I had some sympathy early on in the story.
Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of violence in their home. But whether she inherited some kind of gene that would predispose her to murder, I have a little bit of difficulty with that.
Well, I don't think we know enough yet to say.
Yeah.
There is a lot of research being done on genes and what they call the murder gene, but really nothing absolute at this point that I'm aware of.
Nope.
So, while Alan was successful in school and excitedly making plans for a future on Broadway, Jessica was still really depressed and filled with self-pity. As a stay-at-home mom, she focused more on her own needs, and she was really good at blaming others when she failed. As Alan spent more time at college as a way to cope with this tumultuous marriage, Jessica was more and more suspicious that he was cheating on her and had a girlfriend. But then she finally made a decision to improve herself, to take control and be productive. She went out and got her GED, but then she set out on a campaign to condemn Alan and get sympathy from people. She told everyone that Alan was abusive and cruel and that he often hit her. She said that he yelled at their daughters as well. Alan at the same time didn't know she was saying these things about him, and there's no evidence that these things were true. From what we can tell, he actually was trying to support Jessica, and she even decided to take a college course, which he was all for. This was a history class, and Jessica came to Alan in February of 1994 to let him know she needed to take a trip to Washington, D.C. to do research. And Alan was really relieved to see her showing an interest pretty much in anything. So Jessica went away on a long weekend. But over that weekend, Alan was looking for something, and he noticed that some of her lingerie was missing. So they had been having problems, but of course it hurt him to think that maybe she was having an affair. So he searched the house until he found a phone number for a guy who was in Jessica's history class. And this was a guy she'd mentioned before and seemed kind of excited about, so he wondered if maybe she was having an affair with that guy. When he called the number, the guy's mother answered and told Alan that the guy was in D.C. Well, that's where Jessica was, so put two and two together. He called Jessica and confronted her, but she denied everything and just got really angry with him. But the thing is, Jessica had actually told a friend that she was going to D.C. for an abortion. She never said who the father of the baby was, and after Alan got off the phone with her, he called his parents. He took the kids to their house and returned home to pack up his things. Jessica returned as he was packing up, and she came after him trying to stab him with a large kitchen knife. But he had decided he was moving out. Still, he didn't report this to the police. He returned with his father later to pick up his things and found that most of his stuff was destroyed and a lot of it was outside in the trash. So this was really the end of the marriage, and Jessica had shown Alan how miserable she could really make him when she tried.
Yes, she sure did. After they parted ways, Jessica went right to work. She told her friends that he had left her and the children. She took no responsibility for that. She blamed Alan for the financial problems. But records would show that he always paid child support and household expenses to Jessica. In fact, Alan paid her more money than he was ordered to pay. But she took the money and didn't always use it for bills or the children.
Well, and I'm always a little suspicious when a man says, I'm giving her all the support and she's just spending it on herself. But I think with her, a lot of that was the case because bills weren't always getting paid.
Right. It might be true.
Yeah, I think it might have been in this case. The divorce was finalized in early 1995. Jessica was offered the house in Montevallo, but then she chose to move in with her mother and stepfather. And with Alan's approval, she was given custody of their children. Alan believed she could get over this breakup and be a good mom. Still, Jessica kept the children away from Alan as much as she could. He'd call her at her house and no one would answer, even though he knew they were home. And then he would show up for scheduled visitation and no one would be there. Then one day, Alan called the house and Jessica's mom, Diane, answered. The girls were there, but Jessica had actually been gone for months. She hadn't even called to talk to her daughters since she'd been gone either. And during this time away, Jessica told a friend that she was pregnant with twins. But then she would later say she had a miscarriage. So we don't know the full story on that, but it sure seems like she was getting pregnant a lot.
Alan had his degree from the University of Montevallo, and then he got his first real job as a stage manager at the historic Alabama Theater in Birmingham. Jessica refused to get a job, but she did tell the court that she worked for her stepfather as a secretary. Alan finally understood that Jessica was taking the child support money that he was paying and spending it on herself, and then she would turn around and tell everyone who would listen that Alan was this deadbeat dad who didn't have any interest in his family.
Seems like that was a really tough position for Alan to be in. and that he did try and make the best of things. But she did continue to use their children to punish Alan. She really turned them against him and kept them away all the time. He rarely saw them. Then Alan met Terra. She was a woman who was sent to the Alabama Theater as part of a restoration team. She had spent 4 years as an architectural historian before being assigned to the theater where Alan worked. So Terra was cute, she was smart, and she was actually a mature adult. At age 25, she'd dated enough, but her parents had never seen her really serious about a guy until Alan came along. Alan was different. He and Terra started out as friends first. Then once the romance began, Alan was just thrilled. He really saw her as his soulmate. Being in a stable, loving relationship was a real adjustment for him, though, after that first marriage. He and Terra respected each other, and they could talk about things like grown-ups, and this took some getting used to. Of course, it was great not to be fighting, but it was different.
Yeah, he didn't know what to make of it.
Not really, no.
It wasn't how he viewed married life.
Well, no, and he'd never even really had a chance to date much.
No.
He'd gotten married so young.
Jessica saw him set her sights on him, and he was a goner.
Yep.
Now, once Jessica heard that Alan had a serious girlfriend, she rushed out to find herself a boyfriend. So happened that in the late summer of 1995, Jessica went into a game and card store. She played Magic: The Gathering, which is a role-playing game, and the man working behind the counter, whose name was Brad Tabor, caught her attention. Brad was a single guy, without much in the way of ambition, and Jessica didn't tell him that she had kids, but she started dating him that winter. So she moved in with Brad, and 6 weeks went by before she finally admitted that she had 2 children living at her mother's house.
That's crazy.
Isn't it?
I can't even know how you could do that. She had to be a neglectful mother if she's moving in with this guy without her kids and he doesn't even know they exist.
Right. Well, you just go back to when she was gone and she left the kids for weeks or months without any contact.
Yeah, there was really some serious dysfunction in her family. I think her mother had to be a little bit off as well.
Uh-huh. When Jessica became pregnant by Brad, she elected to have an abortion. Then a few months later, she became pregnant again, and this time decided she would keep the baby. Now, to some people, it seemed that Jessica was using pregnancy as a means to an end. But Brad wasn't cooperating. He didn't propose to her. He didn't show any interest in being a father. And the couple broke up just before the baby was born.
So after giving birth to Brad's child, Sarah, Jessica went to court to get child support. Now, Brad was granted visitation, and he did pay the support, but he wouldn't go because he was afraid to go see his child. Brad had actually decided, along with his family members and his attorney, that it wasn't a good idea for him to be alone with Jessica. He'd heard from his attorney about a recent incident when Jessica had dug her nails into Alan's face and pushed him down some stairs. And Alan's arm had been broken in this fall, and he had actually filed charges against Jessica. So not only was she argumentative and difficult and yada, 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 she was violent.
We can add abuse to that.
Yeah. So in early 1999, Jessica was working at the Birmingham Police Department as a secretary. But this didn't last long. She was fired after she had broken Alan's arm and gotten charged for that. Alan had his attorney file a grievance against Jessica as she continued to refuse to follow the visitation orders. He felt that he'd given her every opportunity to do the right thing, but she just kept refusing. It didn't seem to make sense. He just wanted to see his daughters, and he was really tired of being yelled at and threatened by Jessica.
Yeah, whenever he was scheduled to pick up his girls, Jessica would take them and hide them at a friend's house, and then she'd go around telling people that Alan had never shown up. So Alan felt at this point that he had no choice but to take her to court.
So a while back, I was looking for a matching puzzle game that would challenge me, something different that would require more than one basic strategy round after round. I honestly wondered if I would ever find it. Then I found Best Fiends, the mobile puzzle game that challenges and refreshes my brain. Not an easy task. Best Fiends is like a tall glass of cool water after being stranded in the New Mexico desert. It makes my brain feel exercised and replenished like it just went for a long swim and followed that up with a deep tissue massage. It's a nice feeling.
It certainly is. Now, I enjoy Best Fiends also. It's way more fun than any other matching puzzle game I've tried. It's so much more fun than that game where you just smash candy pieces over and over. Now, one complaint I do have, it's just too much fun.
Okay.
I can't stop playing.
It's true.
But, I'm retired, I have the time, so I'll never get bored with Best Fiends. It actually has thousands of puzzles to solve, and I'm already on level 105.
Show off. With Best Fiends, there's something new to play every day, and the adorable characters you collect as you go just keep coming. The game really progresses level by level, giving me real challenges to engage my brain. Not only can I match up different things, I get to work on blowing up boxes with creatures inside. It's very satisfying to see the wood fly and the creatures pop out. If you're like I was, having doubts about finding a puzzle game with more to offer, I do have some solid advice for you. Give Best Fiends a try. But hey, no blaming me if you can't put it down.
So download the 5-star rated puzzle game, Best Fiends, free today on the App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
So Jessica met Jeff McCord while she was working at the Birmingham Police Department. He was a quiet, awkward guy, and he would turn out to be very easy to manipulate.
Just the kind of guys that Jessica likes.
Yeah, well, I think she's kind of getting desperate at this point. She was still living in the house that Alan had left for her in Montevallo, the one that his father had bought for them. But then she soon started talking about moving into a new house with Jeff. She was really excited to be seeing a police officer. Also, she felt that she needed a stable husband when she faced Alan in court, because if he's going to have Terra, who's very responsible, she's going to need someone on her side that's going to make her look better. But her rage is kind of hard to understand because, Alan never even planned to ask for full custody of his daughters. He didn't want to take them away from their mother, even when he probably should have.
Probably should have, probably could have.
Yes, and kind of needed to, right?
Yeah, but...
But he wanted them to be raised with their mother. He thought she was going to get over all this. And it would be fine if they lived with their mother for him. But he did want her to raise them in a loving, stable environment. And that was becoming a concern that wasn't going to be provided.
Alan and Terra planned to marry in June of 1999. They wanted to do it on the Alabama Theater stage. So they'd hired a caterer, they'd bought flowers, they had a limo, and the invitations were printed. But Jessica didn't seem to want Alan to be happy, and she didn't want Terra to be stepmother to her kids. So to interfere, she kept the girls away, refusing to allow them to attend the wedding. Well, that's something Alan couldn't go along with. He didn't want to get married without his daughters there, so Alan and Terra postponed the wedding.
Well, and I think there's a lot to this, not wanting to get married without his daughters there, because his daughters are already in a situation where they're hearing bad things about him and they're starting to think he doesn't really love them, that he's not there for them, and that's based on what their mother's telling them.
Yeah, she basically has full custody.
She does.
Some visitation when she feels amenable to that, but...
Very rarely.
Yeah, so she's filling their ears with all sorts of stuff.
She was, so I feel like he was thinking, if I don't have my daughters at my wedding, they're going to hold that against me and think I didn't want them there.
Yep.
So it was crucial to him that they be there to attend. But then he actually began to have concerns about marrying anyone. He loved Terra, but it just didn't seem fair to bring an innocent person into this fucked up situation with his ex-wife. Oh, and it was fucked up, seriously. And he really didn't want Terra to be hurt. But at the same time, he didn't want to allow Jessica to ruin his life. He was in love with Terra. So he and Terra finally talked this through, and they agreed that they were going to be married. They'd just have to wait a while so that his daughters could be there.
And the custody case was delayed until December of 1999. And in the meantime, Alan's parents were scheduled for weekend overnight visits in October and November. Also, Alan was allowed to call his daughters on Sunday evenings at 6. Jessica was ordered to have them available for these 15-minute calls. But not surprisingly, she didn't live up to that agreement. Openly disobeying court orders, She told Alan that if he wanted to speak to the girls, he was going to need to buy them cell phones.
And this is 1999, so that's not a common thing to even have a cell phone.
No, it'd be pretty cool, though.
Yeah. Well, then, Alan's mom and dad were scheduled to pick up the girls in October, and Jessica notified Alan's attorney that her grandmother in Salt Lake City had died. So she, her parents, and her children wouldn't be home that weekend until Sunday. So the visit was canceled. Alan and his parents agreed to set up another weekend, actually being very understanding and having some sympathy for Jessica. You know, a death in the family. But Alan's attorney checked into things and learned that Jessica had made up this whole death in the family. Her grandmother was actually alive and fine. So she's lying to the court and keeping those kids away from Alan's side of the family. Then when the December court date arrived, Jessica had it postponed. She claimed that she was sick.
And then over Thanksgiving and Christmas that year, Jessica managed to keep the girls away from their father. Alan did manage to get a couple of phone calls with his daughters over that time period, but he didn't see them at all, not once. He called his parents overwhelmed with sadness and frustration, because not only was Jessica keeping the children away from him, she was also turning them against him. Can only imagine the stuff she's filling up their ears with.
Well, yes, obviously this is a horrible situation for those girls. Alan's lawyer notified Jessica and her lawyer that Alan would be filing a contempt of court petition if she didn't set up a makeup visit with Alan right away. So she was told she needed to contact him, and she just ignored the request. Alan really didn't want to file the contempt petition. It wasn't a good idea to get her more angry, but he had to do something, and he hoped that maybe this would finally convince her to just obey the visitation orders. So he did go ahead with that on the advice of his attorney.
In the meantime, Jessica and Jeff were planning to marry. Jessica convinced Jeff to contact his mother. He'd been estranged from her for years, and he was going to ask her for money. And actually, in the end, his mother gave them enough money for a down payment on a house.
Yes, but Jessica actually wanted more than that, so she still wasn't really happy.
Well, I don't think it would have mattered how much.
No, I don't think she was ever a happy person. In early 2000, Alan filed an amendment to his petition because he had a new job which required traveling with a theater group. And he still wanted to see his kids during the week sometimes because of the schedule. So the new court date was for April 4th, 2000. This would be a chance for them to finally hash out all of their disagreements. Alan was paying support, and all he wanted was to see his daughters. It really didn't seem like that much to ask. It seemed like a simple thing that she just would not allow to happen.
Then Jessica became pregnant with Jeff's child. His mother tried to talk him out of marrying Jessica, but that just made things worse between the two of them. Jessica and Jeff still planned to get married, but he drove her down to Mississippi for another abortion, and they would end up being married just a few weeks before Alan and Terra were married. Now, when April 4th came around, guess what? Jessica didn't show up at court.
Isn't it just crazy that she keeps not showing up and she's not held accountable?
I don't know how she got away with it.
It's terrible that this happened.
By this time, Alan had not seen or spoken with his daughters for months, and the traveling job just wasn't working out. For Alan, he missed seeing Terra, and he really wanted to be in one place for his daughters. He took a position in Maryland, and Terra continued to take classes in Baltimore.
Yes. So it seems like he just really wanted to do the right thing for his children, but he just really gave Jessica too much credit, I feel like, which I understand. He's trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, but she's just really getting away with far too much, either because of him or just because of the court.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like things are just kind of stacked up against him.
It does. So in court, Jessica's attorney seemed as unhappy about Jessica not showing up as Alan was, and she withdrew as Jessica's attorney. The judge was really fed up with Jessica as well. She had been keeping the children away from their father, and she had just recently assaulted him. Alan and his witnesses testified, and Jessica was found in contempt and given a suspended sentence of 10 days in her absence. If she didn't comply and show up for a compliance hearing in October, she would be going to jail. So a few weeks after that court date, Alan wrote a letter to Jessica. He told her that he was giving her 30 days' notice before taking the girls for the summer, per the court order. And it was a really polite letter. It's not like he was trying to be argumentative. And to his surprise, she did comply. He and Terra had their wedding planned for June 24th of 2000. So if he was able to pick up the girls on the 19th, they could make the wedding and see the family, and it would be really nice. So on June 19th, Alan called Jessica, and she told him that the kids were going to be at her mother's house. Alan's mother would drive from Atlanta to Birmingham to pick them up. Then they would stay with her for a few days until Alan returned from his business trip. He could get them in Atlanta when he got back, because his parents lived outside Atlanta, and he and Jessica wouldn't even have to see each other, so it sounds like a great plan.
It does. Well thought out. So after the wedding on June 24th, Alan and Terra honeymooned for a few days, and the girls spent some time with their paternal grandparents. Then Alan and Terra would take them home with them to Maryland for the rest of the summer. And actually, there were no problems at all over the summer. At the end of the summer, Alan drove them back to Birmingham.
And I think at this point he had the feeling like, well, things are settling down. We're going to be able to get along and raise these kids. So he was feeling very optimistic at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he finally was getting somewhere.
Yeah, and I think he felt that way. But for the court date on October 16th of 2000, Jessica's new lawyer showed up, but guess what? She didn't show up again.
Well, that's her pattern.
Yeah, but at this point, she's facing jail time.
That's right.
So it really is illogical that she wouldn't show up. So she hadn't shown up. She was ordered to spend 10 days in jail and to comply with further court orders. But when she found out, it wasn't her fault, right? She was angry. Everybody was just picking on her.
Wasn't her fault.
It was all Alan's fault, really, because why is he doing this? Why is he even taking her to court?
Well, it's just Alan being Alan, right?
Yep.
So after Jessica moved into the new house with Jeff, she became pregnant again, but then she said she had a miscarriage. She didn't give the address of this new house to Alan, so he had no idea where they were, where his kids were, where his ex-wife was.
Yeah, and that's totally against the court orders.
Of course. And Alan had no way to contact Jessica and Jeff. So it looks like she's back to her old habits, hiding the children from him, hiding from an arrest, and she's just on a roll here.
Yeah, so it's really sad. I mean, that there's another set of holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, the New Year, where Alan didn't even get to speak with his daughters. So that's not easy.
No. By late January of 2001, Alan still hadn't found Jessica or the kids. The February court date was postponed until May. Jessica had Jeff take their mailbox down, so no court papers could be delivered. And later that summer, Jessica was pregnant. Custody trial was postponed again to July 31st. July came and went, and Jessica's lawyer got another postponement into September.
And Jessica did give birth to a baby boy, supposedly Jeff's child, on September 28th, 2001. But still, she and Jeff were continuing to hide and skip the court dates. And that December, she was finally located. So she was arrested at her and Jeff's house, which was on Myrtlewood Drive.
Now, I know this is a stupid question.
Okay, go ahead.
But Jeff was a police officer.
Yeah.
And he goes along with all this stuff.
Yeah, nobody said he was a good police officer. And he just didn't seem very bright and totally manipulated by her, although certainly responsible for his actions as well.
Definitely.
Yep. But yeah, he was just as messed up as she was, really. He had to be.
It's starting to look that way, I'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we already heard he was estranged from his mother, so there could be something there.
Yeah.
Not always. It might not have been his fault, but it could have been. And then he's going along with all this, which doesn't even make sense. But one thing is, at least Jeff said, that he was under the impression that Alan was the bad guy, that Jessica was always telling him that Alan had hit her, yada, yada, yada. So
yeah,
that's his kind of defense for going along with it. But still, he's a policeman. Why would he take down a mailbox and have her out with a warrant for her arrest?
Why does he condone her missing court appearances?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't think he had much say in things.
Now, so Jessica called Jeff from jail and blamed him for her being there.
Yeah, he said, it's all your fault.
Before leaving after her 10 days were served, she told her cellmate, somebody's going to pay.
She was angry.
Back home, she cried to Jeff about how none of this was her fault. While she was in jail, Alan had temporary custody of the girls. She had been telling Jeff all along that Alan had been physically abusive.
Right.
She told him that Alan might hurt the children to get back at her, and he couldn't be allowed to get custody. She said she would do anything to keep that from happening.
But, Jeff really knew enough that there should have been some kind of reports or something on this domestic abuse. And why couldn't she go to the court dates and offer up proof that Alan was an abusive man? She never tried to do that.
Well, probably because there might not be any.
Well, we don't think there was any. But I'm just wondering why Jeff would believe her so easily.
Oh, love does strange things.
Yeah, I don't think I can use the word love with these two.
Infatuation.
Yeah, something.
Okay. So Alan enrolled his girls in school in Maryland, and they were there for 3 weeks. Now, at a January 14th court date, Jessica agreed to follow court orders, and she would get help homeschooling the girls.
Well, yeah, because she said she'd been homeschooling them for quite a long time, but she hadn't been involved with any kind of homeschooling organization. She hadn't actually been doing anything, just keeping them out of school. So that's horrible. Those poor girls. I bet their time in Maryland was probably the best time they'd ever had.
I'll bet it was. Now, there was an evidentiary hearing scheduled for March 5th, 2002, and there was no question that Alan was going to be granted full custody of the daughters.
Well, yes, by this time he'd decided that he wanted full custody because Jessica just wasn't changing. And now he's got real concerns about his children.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good idea before they're totally poisoned.
I think so. I think his family and his attorney kind of had to talk him into it. But yeah, I think it was an important step to take at this point. But before the court hearing, attorneys on both sides wanted to take depositions. So the depositions were scheduled for February 15th, and that was a Friday. Since Alan would be flying in from Maryland, he was allowed to have the girls over the weekend while he was visiting. So after the depositions were done on Friday, he'd pick up the children, and then he'd drive to Georgia with them so the family could see them, because the only time that his family can see the girls are when he can bring them over.
Right.
So this was kind of a big deal to be able to pick up his kids and actually have them around his family for the weekend.
Terra was going with Alan to Alabama for the depositions. So they flew in early that morning, and they spent most of the day in Jessica's attorney's office. They did get done by 3:30, so Alan asked if he could pick up the girls a little sooner than planned. Jessica refused.
No surprise there.
And Jessica got home around 4:30 that afternoon. The kids were with Jessica's mom. She never had any intention of letting Jeff pick them up. So he and Terra would be at her house by 6, and that gave her and Jeff an hour and a half to prepare their plan, which was to kill them.
Yeah, that's how far they'd gotten at this point.
Yeah. Now, it sounds like this is something they arrived at suddenly, but this was a plan that had been developing and ongoing.
Yes, absolutely it was. This is one of the most planned out murders I've ever read about.
Yeah, and even when you see how thoroughly planned out it was, you can see how ineffectively planned out it was.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, it was planned for a long time, but poorly planned for certain.
Yes.
So, they were supposed to be there at 6 to pick up the kids and then drive out to Alan's parents' house. At 10 p.m. that night, Alan's parents, Joan and Philip, were waiting for Alan, Terra, and the girls to arrive at their home in Marietta, Georgia. Joan was getting really worried. They should have been there hours earlier. Joan wondered if Jessica had kept the children away from Alan again. But still, wouldn't he have called to let them know that? Of course he would have. Marietta was a 2.5-hour drive from Birmingham. So if the kids had been picked up at 6, they should have been there by 9:30 at the very latest, even if they stopped to get something to eat on the way. Alan always called when he was on his way, or if he would be late. But now Alan wasn't answering his cell phone. They also tried Terra's cell phone again and again, and the call immediately went to a computerized message: "This phone is not in use at this time." I don't think I've ever heard that message from a phone.
No.
But this was a while back, so... Anyway, Philip decided to call Jessica. Now, he didn't like talking to her because He thought she was rude and selfish, and obviously there's not a good relationship there. But he certainly wanted to know where Alan and Terra were. So he dialed the McCord's home phone, and it just rang and rang, no answer. Then at 10:45, Philip and Joan decided they needed to call the police. He knew it was probably too early to expect a police response, but he thought he might be able to reach Jeff McCord at the police station where he worked. But Jeff wasn't at work that night. He'd actually taken the night off. So Philip called the Hoover PD. He asked if any trouble had been reported from the McCord house. The Hoover PD didn't have any report of a domestic incident at that house, but they were willing to send an officer to look at the house and just see what was going on. This was a routine overdue motorist call. When people didn't show up where and when they were expected, worried family members called the police. And there was almost always a simple explanation: a flat tire, a dead phone, whatever. Shit happened.
And the McCord house was in a quiet residential neighborhood. When Patrolman McDonald arrived at their address, it was dark, because it was after midnight, so pretty much every family in the neighborhood sound asleep. McDonald pulled up to the house and walked onto the front porch. And that's when he noticed something strange. The window panels on either side of the front door were covered with towels and sheets. So it looked like somebody was trying to block the view from outside. You can't look into the house and see what's going on. This could be chalked up to home repairs being done, he supposed, but then all the windows were covered in kind of a similar way. There was a sign on the porch, handwritten on a piece of cardboard: "We're having some problems with our front door. Please come around to the back door." So the officer rang the doorbell and knocked. No response. There were no cars in the driveway. He tried to look into the garage, but these windows were covered up with paper towels. So he returned to his cruiser and called into dispatch that he had not made any contact at the McCord residence.
So this is one of the most brutal and the most idiotic plans I've ever heard.
It sure is.
It really is. So hours later, between 3 and 3:30 a.m., 4 friends in a minivan were driving from South Carolina to Georgia. These were farmers, and they were taking their chickens to a chicken show, so they'd left at the middle of the night pretty much. As they made their way through the dark, though, they saw red and orange light in the distance. And this was on property that they were familiar with. It belonged to a friend. So they were really worried that there was a forest fire or the friend might lose cattle or their home. As they got closer, they could see that something was on fire, and it was a car. This car was engulfed in flames, so they called the sheriff right away. The fire department came, and they were able to put out the fire. So this was a 2001 Pontiac Grand Am, and it was parked in front of a fence. Most of the plastic had melted, and the metal was charred. An accelerant had to have been used. The license plate had fallen off, so that could be used to trace the vehicle. But the seats were gone, and there was something burning in the trunk. And this smelled like burning flesh. So at first they're thinking maybe someone was poaching and hiding a deer in their car or something. But when they got closer, they saw the horrible, horrible thing. It was 2 dead bodies. It looked like a male and a female. So they're thinking this is probably a double homicide. Why else would they be there?
Yeah, right? I suppose you could say murder-suicide too, but still.
Well, you're going to set yourself on fire? That'd be really weird.
It would be a tough way to go.
It's not like they were sitting in the car. They were crunched up in the trunk. So someone had put them there.
So by 6 o'clock in the morning, Philip and Joan Bates still had not heard from Alan, and they're thinking pretty much something bad has gone on here. So Philip called some rental car agencies because he knew that Alan had rented a car at the airport. So he just did it alphabetically. He started with Avis. Now the agent was very helpful, and he listened carefully as Philip explained things. Then the agent sounded worried, and that set off some alarm bells in Philip's head. So the agent put Philip on hold, kind of nervous. He said that he needed to talk to the supervisor. Apparently he did, and when the manager came on the line, he told Philip that he had been told to give the phone number of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to anyone who called about that car rental. So this is the point where Philip knew that something really terrible had happened.
Well, sure, if you call and they want you to call the State Bureau of Investigation, they wouldn't do that if it was a car accident or anything other than a crime. And he was smart enough to know that, although of course he didn't want to know that. And later that morning it was confirmed that the car was the red Pontiac Grand Am that Alan had rented at the Avis at the airport terminal in Birmingham. So it was a red car, but they couldn't tell because when it burned it turned white and gray, so they didn't even know it was a red car at first. The GBI sent agents out to speak with the Bateses because they felt pretty confident the two bodies were Alan and Terra. Still, they needed dental records so they could confirm the identities before they were going to say, it's them. But everyone was a little bit relieved that there were only two bodies and not four, because they could have been killed with the two little girls in the car. But that didn't seem to be the case. So the bodies were identified as Alan and Terra. Inside the car's trunk, forensics found a bullet that had hit Alan in the wrist and gone through his watch. And this was a match to bullets they had found in the victims. At autopsy, each body had 4 bullet wounds, so there's a total of 8 bullet wounds.
Yeah, Jessica and Jeff got home early Saturday morning. They'd been out all night. They said that they had been to the movies and dinner, and then they decided to go for a drive. Then they were at Home Depot when they opened because they were there to pick up supplies for Jessica's stepfather. He was planning to work on their house that day. Now, both Jessica and Jeff seemed to be pretty beat up and tired.
Yeah, Jessica checked her phone and saw that Philip and Joan Bates' number was there multiple times. So she did call them back. Philip answered, sounding pretty freaked out. Alan's brothers were there now, along with 2 GBI investigators. Jessica asked Philip, "Is Alan there? Can I talk to him?" And when he told her that they didn't know where he was, she acted really surprised. Finally, Joan got on to talk with her and accused Jessica of harming them. But Jessica played dumb. She said she had no idea what Joan was talking about.
Hi, I just want to take a moment here to remind our listeners about our premium show, True Crime Brewery Premium. By subscribing at tiegrabber.com, you can get your TCB episodes commercial-free, plus you can enjoy an extra ad-free bonus episode each and every month. You also will get a gift from us with a handwritten thank you note and some miscellaneous TCB swag. So if this sounds like something you might enjoy, just go to tiegrabber.com. Click on subscribe and you'll see your options. Subscribing is really a great way to support our show while getting yourself some bonus and ad-free shows.
So there seemed to be a lot going on at the McCord house that morning. Jessica's stepfather was coming in to replace the kitchen floor. At the same time, walls were being plastered, carpeting pulled up, and furniture being taken to the dump. Now, Jessica refused to let investigators search the house. And actually, she was pretty argumentative and defensive about that whole thing. So, some more red lights going on here.
Well, it doesn't seem like she was ever reasonable or kind. She just sounds like your basic nightmare of a person.
Right. And there's all this stuff that looks like it's going on in the house.
Bad. It's all bad.
Yeah.
So police did go and interview Jeff at work. He showed no concern about Alan and Terra's deaths. He said that they had never shown up to pick up the girls, and that he and Jessica had just enjoyed a belated Valentine's Day date. And luckily, he had 2 movie ticket stubs from the evening before neatly put in his wallet, so he was able to show them. Police found Jessica at her mother's house, and she gave the same story Jeff had given, adding that she had called Alan's cell phone and left a message asking him where he was. But investigators were not believing Jeff or Jessica at this point. Something's just off.
Major off. So February 17th, the police arrived at the McCords with a search warrant, and there were things going on there that immediately seemed pretty odd. The house was just in complete disarray, and it was so messy that people had to step around and over things, even just to walk a couple steps. The carpet in the living room had been ripped out. They found some ammunition in a downstairs room, and in the master bedroom they found a pistol, a rifle, and more ammunition. Then in the attic they found another pistol. They stopped the search at 5:30 in the evening, and it had been really difficult to find things in that mass of clutter. And their warrant didn't cover looking in walls or tearing into things. And also the guns they found were not a match for the bullets that killed Terra and Alan. The second search the police found a slug that had traveled through the wall into the garage. Outside of the den door, a can of gasoline was found, along with more ammunition and an empty bottle of bleach.
So the red flags are just popping up like crazy
boing,
here.
Boing, boing, boing.
Yes. Investigators knew that Jessica's stepfather, Albert Bailey, had left the McCord house with a couch on Saturday the 16th. The Hoover PD followed Bailey, and they saw him go to a self-storage facility. He was questioned, and he admitted to dumping the couch. When asked why, he said Jessica had told him to do it. So the couch was next to a dumpster near this self-storage place. But the back cushions of the couch were all cut out. And this was a fairly new couch with a sofa bed. But also all the cushions and the mattress inside of it were missing. So that is highly suspicious. So of course they picked up the couch and brought it in for forensic testing. There were some dark stains on an armrest that tested positive with luminol, but DNA testing would show that this was not Alan or Terra's blood, so that was kind of a surprise. When a female officer interviewed Jessica's children, they told her that the downstairs den had been remodeled. So the police needed to go back and concentrate their search there. So they had to get another search warrant. And when they got there, they saw that someone had done a quick remodel job in that den. There were new floor tiles, new wallpaper, but both jobs were done very poorly. So when they removed the wallpaper, they did see a bullet hole in the drywall. Then inside the drywall, they found a bullet, and this one would end up matching those found in the victims. They also found a small amount of blood on the coffee table, which ended up belonging to Terra. Investigators were able to put together a solid theory on what had happened to Alan and Terra Bates when they arrived at the McCord house on February 15th of 2002.
Yeah, after a meeting Jessica had with her child custody attorney in early 2002, Jessica began talking to Jeff about killing Alan. They were alone in their living room. Alan and the custody issue were the focus of Jessica McCord's life. She was an angry, bitter woman with no trace of a conscience. When it looked like Alan was going to get custody, Jessica was absolutely consumed with how to punish him. Jeff didn't put too much thought into the suggestion at first, but Jessica was dead serious. She sounded matter-of-fact about the whole thing, as if murder was an option she was actually considering.
Oh, and she was.
But she was. To Jeff, she made it seem as though she was afraid of losing her daughters. She said she couldn't allow an abusive man to raise her daughters. And she had told Jeff that both of her wrists had been broken by Alan, and that he had once cracked her sternum, her breastbone. She showed him the scars, Jeff said, and he believed her. Jessica had described 2 separate incidents where she claimed Alan had hurt her badly enough to put her in the hospital. But Jessica's continued complaints about her children being forced by the court to go and live with an abusive father, Jeff began to think that it might be his duty to protect his wife and her children.
Yeah, and maybe he thought that, or maybe he just liked the idea of killing people. It's really hard to say what he was thinking.
Right.
The thought of getting rid of Alan really was consuming Jessica, so he was hearing about it all the time. In her mind, the only way to avoid putting the kids through absolute hell with Alan and Terra was to remove Alan from the equation completely. Alan didn't know it, of course, but his life was in the hands of 2 people who just saw his death as a means to getting the life they wanted. They decided that February 15th, after the depositions, would be the perfect time to murder Alan. And once they saw that Terra had come to town with Alan, it was simple for them to just make that little jump to, well, yeah, we'll kill her too.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
That's horrible. I mean,
It is horrible.
Here's the ex-husband coming to town. We're going to bump him off. Oh, and his new wife's with him. We might as well take care of her too.
Something really, really wrong with these people's brains.
Isn't there?
Yeah.
So Jeff switched with another policeman, giving him the night off. They would need to set up for their murder plans, and there would likely be plenty of cleaning and covering up afterwards. Now, as you said, Joe, it was a moronic plan. But it was pretty evil also.
Well, not to try and give advice to killers, but if you think there's going to be a lot of cleaning afterwards, why would you shoot them in your own house, where you know you're going to leave this huge mess of blood and you're going to get caught? Doesn't make any sense. So as he began to consider the details of killing Alan, Jeff did recognize some problems in Jessica's first plan. So Alan was supposed to be at the house at 6 or 6:30. If they killed Alan and he didn't return home to Terra or his parents' house, wherever he was planning to go with the kids, they would be the prime suspects. Jessica decided that they would burn his body and burn up his car.
And I don't know what that solves.
I don't either.
But
it's stupid. Well, apparently, either because he was mentally unwell or just plain stupid, or probably both, this plan made sense to Jeff, and he's like, yeah, that'll work. He thought, well, Jessica's really thought this through. Okay.
Yep. So as a law enforcement officer, Jeff knew full well that when investigating a murder, the police start by investigating family, friends, and acquaintances, especially those with a motive. The bottom line for Jessica was to get rid of the body, or bodies. She believed that if there's no body, then there is no case.
Well, that's not true, and a lot of criminals have thought that incorrectly.
We've known that. So basically the plan was this. Alan shows up to pick up the girls. Jessica pretends to go get the girls. Jeff shoots Alan. Then they dispose of the body and torch the car, the rental car.
Yes, and then they're just going to throw Terra into the mix as well.
Yeah, it's like a twofer.
Yes. So burning the car and shooting Alan would point the authorities towards a carjacking. At least that's what Jessica and Jeff thought. Jessica gave Jeff the idea that Alan had made other people angry and that he had a lot of enemies, which really wasn't true. For their alibi, they would buy movie tickets. Brilliant. Oh, we're so smart. The two thought this was a great idea, as if the police would never consider that they killed Alan before the movie, or that maybe they'd bought tickets and not sat through the whole movie. Who could be that clever?
I know.
And then from the movie, they were going to go somewhere romantic for their belated Valentine's Day date, maybe take a walk. And then in the morning, they'd go to Home Depot because they needed to pick up supplies to clean up the mess, which they thought would make sense because there were remodeling projects going on in the house. So they think that this terrible plan is a good one.
Absolutely.
So when Alan showed up to pick up his daughters, he'd walk up to the front door, he'd see the sign to go to the back door, and if Terra was with him, she'd die too, of course. Jessica would invite him into the house, but the girls wouldn't be home, they'd be with Jessica's mother. Then once inside, Jeff would surprise them. Jessica was really excited about this. She showed no signs of concern and certainly no empathy for Alan or Terra or their families or even her daughters who would lose their father.
So right at 6 p.m., Alan and Terra pulled up in front of the McCord's house, driving the red Pontiac Grand Am. Jessica and Jeff were inside the house, waiting, watching them from an upstairs window. They had ditched the plan to use a sign, so Jessica ran outside to greet them. Alan wanted to park on the street. He'd never been inside the house, never been allowed to be inside of the house. So it seemed odd that suddenly Jessica's inviting him in. They go in. There's Jeff sitting on a stool in the den, and this is just a few feet away from the couch that Terra and Alan were invited to sit on. Jeff had his gun concealed in his waistband. Terra walked in first, and she looked happy, maybe a bit confused by how friendly Jessica was acting. Alan walked toward the door while he was eyeing the barking, growling dog. Jessica came in last, behind Alan and Terra. Once inside, Jessica said to Alan and Terra, "Have a seat. The girls are upstairs, getting ready to come down. They've been preparing a play for you." And the girls were always putting on plays and shows for their dad because they knew that he loved the theater. So Jessica walked up the stairs toward the bedrooms where the girls were supposedly waiting.
Yeah, so Alan and Terra sat and waited. Less than 2 minutes later, Jessica returned, but she was alone. Alan and Terra were facing Jessica as she stood in front of them, and there was this uncomfortable moment of silence and just kind of staring before Jeff stood up. Terra was directly across from where Jeff stood. Alan moved away from Terra and sat on the other end of the couch. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, Jeff reached around to the back of his waistband, pulled out his gun, and just shot Terra near her head, aiming for her head, I would think. She fell forward into the floor. Of course, shocked, Alan began to stand up. Then Jeff pointed his gun at Alan and fired at him twice. Both of these shots hit Alan. He tried to get up on his feet, and then Jeff shot him again. Jeff then shot 2 more rounds into Terra to make sure she was dead. She hadn't spoken or moved or given any indication that she was still alive. So Jeff had killed 2 human beings methodically for no real reason. While he killed Jessica's ex-husband and his wife, Jessica just sat on the stairs watching. And she was very calm. She may have even enjoyed watching this. Jessica rummaged through her dead ex-husband's clothing and got the keys to the car. Then they pulled the car up to the house and began cleaning up. This is when they put the 2 bodies into the trunk of the rental car.
Yeah, so they had about 6 hours to clean everything up. People were expecting Alan, Terra, and the girls in Georgia. And by the next afternoon, law enforcement would be asking them questions. So together they wrapped both bodies in blankets and old curtains. When they went back inside, Jessica called Alan's cell phone number, and his voicemail picked up. "Hey," Jessica said, "where are you guys? We're waiting for you. The girls are here. We're all waiting for you. Where are you?" Then, in a sarcastic tone, she added, "It's real nice of you not to call." And she hung up. But later, investigators would be able to see that Alan's cell phone pinged within a 3-mile radius of the McCord home. People keep forgetting about that. Well, this was 20 years ago. Maybe they didn't know it then.
Maybe not, but she messed up in many ways.
Yeah, not just that.
No. Jessica and Jeff took some cleaner and a roll of paper towels to wipe down the rental car after they dumped it, and they do that before they set it on fire. They used some of these paper towels to start the fire, and one was found at the site of the burning car, and it had a really distinctive design like little drawings of children, which matched the paper towels found at the McCord home. So there was a lot left to be done inside that house. They had to get rid of the bodies. Then they would return to the house to clean up. Jeff drove Alan's rental, and Jessica drove their family van. Jessica had both of the Bates' cell phones with her, and she had this plan that she would make calls along the way to make it look like Alan and Terra had been using their phones.
And so they drove into town. They bought their movie tickets. Jessica wanted to stop at a local strip mall because she had a problem.
And this was really, really dumb.
She's using Terra's cell phone to see if she could get into the voicemail to hear a message someone had left. But she thought she had accidentally recorded incriminating evidence that she was hitting buttons. So she wanted to stop at a cell phone kiosk and ask for help, which they did. But the guy at the kiosk had no idea how to access the voicemail.
Yeah, so they just left. That's an extra witness they added.
Yeah.
So then Jessica called her mother's house, and her stepfather answered, and she asked if they would keep the girls overnight. He said, "No problem, they're already asleep." Apparently, she'd already forgotten, though, that she had just called Alan's cell and left a message saying that the girls were there with her. So, duh. Then Jessica and Jeff continued driving. They actually stopped at a Subway and ate some subs with these 2 dead bodies in the back of the trunk. So that gives you some indication of the callousness. Jeff took the gun apart and threw pieces of it out of his car window as he drove. Then they stopped to buy a gallon of gasoline and a new gas can. After they passed through Atlanta, heading east, Jessica pulled over at a rest stop to wipe down the car. So they both wiped the interior of the car, the door handles, and the outside of the trunk. Before leaving, Jeff walked into the information center at the rest area, and he bought some lighter fluid and a cigarette lighter. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I hate to laugh because it's such a sad, horrible thing. But it's just a joke, the whole plan. And by now it was after 2 a.m., so according to what Jeff later would tell investigators, when they got there and they set the car on fire, Jessica was actually smiling and enjoyed watching it burn. And she praised Jeff, telling him that he had done a really great thing for her daughters.
By 3 a.m, Jeff and Jessica were on their way home to clean up, and on their way through Atlanta, they stopped at a convenience store. Now Jeff put the now empty gas can on the sidewalk, and Jessica wiped it down. Jeff tossed the lighters out of the van's window as he drove. Then once they were back in town, they went directly to the Home Depot. And they were the first people there, standing by the entrance before they opened. They bought a razor blade to cut carpeting and heavy black plastic. At their Myrtlewood Drive house, the carpet was soaked with blood. So it's going to be close to impossible to get rid of all the evidence.
Yeah, I'd even say it was impossible. But good old Jessica said, "Let's just burn everything."
Well, yeah.
She said, "We can light the side of the house on fire where the murders had taken place. It worked for the car, she thought. Why not the house?" But Jeff talked her out of this. He said 2 fires would be too suspicious.
Thank you, Dr. Einstein.
Thank goodness he was there, huh?
Yeah.
So they cleaned and remodeled the house hastily, the best they could, I guess, but this effort was just an abysmal failure. Of course it was. They don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, and it turned out that the blood on the arm of the couch didn't belong to either Terra or Alan. Nevertheless, there's still plenty of incriminating evidence in the McCord home. So crime scene technicians found other traces of Terra's and Alan's blood, as well as a bullet in a wall, and this bullet matched bullets found in their bodies. Now, when the police went looking for Jessica and Jeff with arrest warrants, they couldn't find them. Jessica had taken the kids to a friend's house in Pensacola, Florida, and they left the kids there and returned to Alabama, where they hid at another friend's house.
I'm just shocked these people had friends.
Yeah. Or that they put them up.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
obviously they didn't tell them what they were doing.
No, I think at this point they probably didn't know.
So Jessica and Jeff were located and arrested about 5 days after the murders, February 21st. Jessica had not told her children about their father and Terra's deaths, even though it had been several days.
Yeah, so that's really warped as well.
It is. Jeff pleaded guilty to the murders, and he was sentenced to life in prison. He refused to testify against Jessica, stating that he was afraid to go to prison and be labeled not only as a former police officer, but as a snitch.
So Jessica went to trial, and her trial began on February 11th of 2003. Even though a lot of the evidence against her was circumstantial, prosecution had the bullet found in their house and Terra's blood that had been found on the coffee table, and they had proof that Jessica's cell phone had made calls while she was driving to Georgia in the middle of the night to get rid of that car and the bodies. The only people who testified for the defense were Jessica herself and her mother. Jessica's mother lied for her, claiming that Jessica and Jeff had stopped by her house at midnight to check on the children, and she stuck to this story on cross, but she wasn't a credible witness. Jessica also portrayed Alan as the bad guy in her testimony, so this didn't win her any sympathy because he's a victim, and there's no evidence he ever did anything to hurt her.
Right. So on February 15th...
Yeah, and that's like exactly a year.
Yeah. Jessica was found guilty on 2 counts of capital murder in the deaths of Alan and Terra. The murders were premeditated, with extensive plans made to take the 2 lives and cover it up. So sentencing took place on February 17th. Even after she was found guilty, she didn't accept responsibility or show remorse. But in the end, the jury decided to spare Jessica's life, and they sentenced her to life in prison with no chance for parole.
Well, in exchange for sharing the details of the murders with investigators, even though he didn't testify, Jeff was granted a life sentence with the chance of parole. And in June of 2017, his parole was denied, and he'll be eligible again in 2022. So let's hope he doesn't get out. I just feel like someone like him, even if he doesn't have a lot of murderous intent, would be so easy for anyone to talk into this.
Well, we've already proven that.
Yeah.
So after they were arrested, Jessica and Jeff were divorced. One more creepy note to this, Jessica now uses the name Jessica Bates, taking the last name of the man whose murder she planned and covered up. She left 5 children motherless, 2 daughters with Alan, who were then raised by Alan's parents, 2 that she had with Jeff McCord, and another child with Brad.
Yeah, Brad Tabor, remember him?
Yeah, and this one was conceived in between her marriages to Alan and Jeff.
Right.
So in the end, her violent efforts to keep custody of her children resulted in her losing all of them. Her second child with Jeff was born while she was in custody. So she was pregnant at the time of the murders. And if you keep in count of pregnancies, she had 5 children, at least 5 abortions, and possibly as many as 3 miscarriages.
Yeah, she's like the poster child for contraception.
Isn't she?
Now, the miscarriages might be made up.
Yeah, we're just going on her reporting.
Just seems like pregnancy was her go-to attention getter.
Yeah, well, it worked, up to a point.
Well, and I'm all for a woman's right to choose, but she's just an atrocity of a human being.
Yes.
So our sources are the Washington Post 2002 archives, a book titled Death Trap by M. William Phelps, the Birmingham Real-Time News from January 13th, 2019, and Snapped Season 8, Episode 3. There's also a Murderpedia page on Jessica McCord. Just have to be careful with Murderpedia because it's not always correct. But we did find some good pictures and information on there as well. TCB's music was written and produced by Tristan Capel. And if you love jazz, you might want to check out his website, tristancapel.com. If you have comments for us, a case suggestion, or a beer recommendation, please send us an email to truecrimebrewery@tiegrabber.com. Or you can go to our website, tiegrabber.com, and write your comments for us there, or even record a voicemail. Your voicemail may be played on an upcoming episode, and we'd love to hear from you. I'll include links for all of these options in our show notes to make it easier. And Dickie has come in with some feedback today. Can't wait to hear it.
Hot off the press. We had several voicemails over the past week, so I picked a couple of those and one email. So we've got a voicemail from Kathy, who has comments on some episodes and a case suggestion for us.
Hi, Dick. Hi, Jill. My name is Kathy. I am from Durwood, Maryland, and I've been meaning to send you a voicemail ever since you featured the Lyon sisters on your podcast. I knew I could not procrastinate any longer once I heard this week's episode on Bradford Bishop. So I currently, as I said, live in Durwood, Maryland, which is about 10 miles north of Wheaton Plaza and Bethesda. Wheaton Plaza, which is where the Lyons girls disappeared, and Bethesda, which is where the Bishops lived. Back at the time of both of these murders, I lived in Aspen Hill, which is only about 3 miles from both of these locations. I used to shop at Wheaton Plaza each year with my girlfriends for school clothes. When Catherine and Sheila disappeared, I was in Daytona Beach on a spring break senior trip. But we heard about it while we were away, and it was just so terrible. This was my first exposure to a child being abducted. I followed the case over the years, although there was little progress. Each anniversary, our local news channels would report on it. I heard when they determined what had happened, but did not seek out the details. It was not until I listened to your podcast that I heard the whole story, and it was so difficult to listen to, as I could just remember seeing their sweet faces on the news. Thank you for covering it. That same year, in August of 1975, we had another tragedy in our community, a bit closer to home, when 15-year-old Kathy Beatty was murdered behind the local Walmart store on Connecticut Avenue. I would suggest this as a case to cover, but there's probably not enough info to make a case, as the person who killed her was never found. As for the Bishop case, I also remember how horrible it was. All three of these happened within a year of each other, and it was a lot for our community to take in. One last connection I wanted to mention is that of the Hoggle children, Sarah and Jacob. I heard someone on your podcast mention this as a case suggestion. The year the Hoggle children disappeared, their cousins started attending the private school where I work. The mom of these two cousins and the aunt of Sarah and Jacob would keep us updated on the lack of progress on this case. I thought it was interesting that so many of the situations I was well aware of have been either featured or mentioned on your show. I also have a case suggestion. Laura Wallen, a beloved history teacher who lived in Olney, Maryland, and worked in Howard County, Maryland, did not show up for the first day of school in September of 2017. I think there's plenty to do a show on this case, but do not want to give away all of the details here. One thing to note, if you decide to do this case and come across that she was found in Damascus, Washington County, Virginia, this is not correct. She was found in Damascus, Maryland, which is about 5 miles from where I live now. Or maybe her location was more like 10. So there are a lot of twists and turns in this case, and I would love to hear your take on it. You guys do a great job. Thanks so much. And sorry this is so long.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Please don't apologize. That was an excellent voicemail, full of information. And it's really nice to hear a little bit about someone who's familiar with victims. And it makes the Lyon sisters feel a little more like real people. It personalizes it, which I think is really important.
Yeah, so this case that Kathy recommended, she said she didn't want to give too much away, so I will not give too much away either, except to say that she was murdered before school started, and it seemed that she was involved in some kind of love triangle.
And this was Laura Wallen. Okay.
So I'm going to leave it at that, because if we do decide to do the case, I want some surprises.
Okay. That sounds like an interesting one, so I'll look forward to what you can find out.
We'll do it.
Okay, so we have another voicemail, and this one's from Margie.
Hi, Jill. Hi, Dick. It's Margie here. I live in a place called Cessnock. It's in New South Wales, Australia, and it is famous for its vineyards. I'm sorry, Dick, but I think we do have a brewery out there, which I must investigate and see. There's always new things popping up out there. Anyway, I just love your podcast. Anyway, I go to bed with you till the night time. I have my lunch with you till the night time. So thank you so much. I just love it. I have a story for you, and I'm not sure whether you've heard of a man called Ivan Milat. But he was named the backpacker murderer. He caused so many deaths. But anyway, if you've not heard of him, I'm sure that you would like to follow that story. It went on for a few years, though. But anyway, love everything you're doing, and thank you so much.
Okay, so it's Margie. Sorry for saying Margie. Thank you, Margie. And I do believe we've heard of this case. I'm pretty sure it's been recommended before, but it certainly sounds like something that we should cover.
Yeah, this guy, over like a 4-year time, killed 7 backpackers. That's why he's called the backpacker killer. These were all hikers and stuff that he abducted. He was sentenced to 7 consecutive terms.
Wow.
Life terms. And died in prison a couple of years ago.
So it took him a while to find him. It seems like it went on for about 4 years.
Yeah, they got him.
Pretty famous case, I believe. I think we have heard of it before, so we will definitely be covering that one. I think it's pretty safe to say.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. Okay, and then how many emails? So we're just going to have one email today?
I just did one email because I figure, we're getting lengthy into the time here. Let's finish up.
Yes, Dickie likes to be very succinct.
Huh.
Okay, so our email is from Melissa.
Yeah, she has a case suggestion.
Okay.
And she's succinct also. She said, Melinda Duckett from Leesburg, Florida. Her son Trenton has been missing since 2006. Now, the thing with this is that Melinda Duckett appeared on Nancy Grace and apparently was treated harshly by people on the show.
Well, Nancy Grace, I could see it, I have to say.
Well, in a few days after being on the show, Melinda Duckett killed herself.
So do we think it's because she was so hurt, or do we think she had something to do with her son's disappearance?
Well, a lawsuit was filed against the show by her family, and they settled out of court. So I think that they were blaming the show for causing her death.
Well,
but we're going to look into that.
I would say Nancy can be a bit harsh. I mean, sometimes with good reason.
Yeah. Well, if she has an idea about something, she's not afraid to express it.
Exactly. That's for sure. Okay. Well, thanks, Melissa. We will definitely look into that one as well. These are great case suggestions.
Some good
really.
Ones. Yeah.
Impressed with them today.
I got some other equally good ones for next week.
Yeah, we do have a few. So send us a voicemail if it's something you even would consider wanting to do, because we probably play at least half of them. Play a good number of them, so you have a pretty good chance of getting yours played.
We do.
Yeah. And we love to hear from people, so we definitely encourage you to leave a voicemail if it's something you're comfortable doing.
You got it.
Okay, everyone. So we're going to head off. It's really warm out today, and I hope it's nice where you are. And we really look forward to seeing you again at the quiet end.
Down there, where I've saved seats for everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, take care.
Bye, guys.
See you later. Bye-bye.